You're watching SABC News live from Johannesburg. Here are your headlines. Former Namibian President Sam Nujoma has passed on. He died in hospital in Windhoek at the age of 95. The mortal remains of the South African National Defence Force soldiers have arrived in Entebbe in Uganda, and it's anticipated that all necessary procedures will be completed by no later than Tuesday. Rescue efforts are still underway following a devastating bus crash in the southern Mexico's Tabasco state that left at least 41 people dead. A very warm welcome to the week ahead. We are live with you from our SABC News studios here in Johannesburg for the next 2 hours. Good afternoon, Amari Geta Matlabe. And if you'd like to participate, please give us a call to share your thoughts or pose questions. The number is 011-714-0680 or 81 or 82. As always, it's wonderful to have you with us. We start here. The Namibian President Nangolo Mbumba has hailed the former statesman Dr. Sam Nujoma as the gallant son of the land. Mbumba announced the passing of Nujoma this morning. The 95-year-old died at a hospital in Windhoek. Mbumba says Nujoma heroically marshaled the Namibian people during the darkest hours of the liberation struggle until the attainment of freedom and independence on the 21st of March, 1990.
Fellow Namibians, the foundation of the Republic of Namibia have been shaken. Over the past 3 weeks, the founding president of the Republic of Namibia and founding father of the Namibian nation was hospitalized for medical treatment and medical observation due to ill health. Unfortunately, this time, the most gallant son of our land could not recover from his illness. It is therefore with utmost sorrow and sadness that I make the announcement this morning, the 9th of February 2025, to the Namibian people, our African brothers and sisters, and to the world at large about the passing of our revered freedom fighter and the revolutionary leader, His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma. President Nujoma passed on at the age of 95 on the 8th of February at 23 hours 45 minutes in Windhoek, Namibia. Our founding father lived a long and consequential life, during which he served the people of this country he so much loved. Our founding father heroically marshaled the Namibian people during the darkest hours of our liberation struggle until the attainment of freedom and independence on the 21st of March, 1990. As founding president, His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma provided maximum leadership to our nation and spared no effort to motivate each and every Namibian to build a country that would stand tall and proud among the nations of the world. In that vein, our revered leader, Dr. Nujoma, did not only blaze the trail to freedom, but he also inspired us to rise to our feet and to become masters of this vast land of our ancestors. During this period of national mourning, we should be comforted by the unmatched leadership and extraordinary contribution of President Nujoma to the liberation struggle, the development, and unity of the Namibian people. I would like to thank the medical staff who cared diligently for our treasured leader. Also, I would like to thank Namibians and friends of Namibia who extended messages and prayers of recovery to our founding father and founding president, His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma. On behalf of the people and the government of the Republic of Namibia, I convey my sincere condolences to the founding First Lady of the Republic of Namibia, Her Excellency Madam Kovambo Nujoma, also to Honorable Utoni Nujoma, Minister, the Nujoma children, as well as the entire Nujoma and Kondombolo family. Following consultation with the Nujoma and Kondombolo families, the government of the Republic of Namibia will announce a period of national mourning and burial arrangements.
Staying with that story, the founding father of the Namibian Republic, Dr. Sam Nujoma, has always been hailed as a man with a deep passion for politics and yearning to see his people free from oppression. The 95-year-old anti-apartheid activist was born in 1929. Nujoma served as the Namibian president for 15 years from 1990 to 2005. Kairike Kumalo has details.
Economic development which meant to benefit all Namibians, irrespective of color or race or status in the society.
A gallant freedom fighter, Sam Nujoma. His name is synonymous with the Namibian struggle for independence against colonialism and the apartheid regime.
It is, above all, a moment of hope. Hope that the future of this vast and beautiful land will bring peace, security and prosperity for all its children. The independence of Namibia marks the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new era.
Nujoma was Namibian president from 1990 and stepped down in 2005, handing over power to his successor, President Hifikepunye Pohamba. He believed that the African continent should sort out its own challenges.
We have the biggest problem of the DRC. DRC being a huge country, the heart of Africa. It's not too easy to handle that situation, but we believe that by consulting and bringing the forces to the conflict to talk to each other, to interact, surely we will find a peaceful solution to the Congolese problem.
Nujoma also shared a close bond with former President Nelson Mandela.
I have been to Windhoek several times. My president has been here several times in order to exchange views on the problems that are facing our two countries and the region. And that was the spirit of our discussion today. We discussed the DRC, and my president here has been a principal figure in trying to bring about peace, either making individual efforts or bringing together all the countries that have got armies in the Congo.
The former statesman is also passionate about development.
They concentrate to economic development with a clear purpose of improving the life of the masses of our people in the region. And as Comrade the President Mandela have said, we also discussed bilateral issues. We have unemployment problem in Namibia as well as in South Africa. And we still have huge resources like the Kutu gas. We have now 20 trillion cubic feet offshore Namibia. This we can develop together and give employment to thousands of Namibians and South Africans.
Nujoma is a Pan-Africanist.
I remember here in Zimbabwe, there was a colonial oppressor Ian Smith, who claimed at one point that there will be no independence in Zimbabwe, not even in his lifetime. But Comrade Mugabe and all ZANU-PF combatants engaged this man and defeated him at the battlefield. Today, we are all happy that Namibia and the rest of Africa are free forever.
He also understood the value of education.
This is a great continent, very rich continent. What we need to do is to educate and train our people massively, so that the Africans will produce and export the material produced from the resources that they have.
Nujoma received the Order of the Champions of OR Tambo in gold for his opposition to the apartheid system, and he fought alongside South African freedom fighters during the struggle. ANC enjoys close ties with the Namibian Former Liberation Movement, SWAPO. Former President Nujoma has always been hailed as a beacon of hope to the Namibian nation and the world at large. Khalihle Khumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
To this now, the mortal remains of the South African National Defence Force soldiers arrived in Entebbe in Uganda. The standard pathology procedure will commence today. It is anticipated that all necessary procedures will be completed by no later than Tuesday. The soldiers killed in combat were part of the Southern African Development Community mission in the Eastern DRC and lost their lives as the M23 rebels captured the city of Goma. Now, the SADC and Eastern African Community Summit has called for an immediate ceasefire in the DRC. Leaders from both regions met in Tanzania to discuss the Great Lakes crisis. In attendance were President Cyril Ramaphosa, Rwandan President Paul Kagame, Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan, and Kenyan President William Ruto, among others. The joint summit has emphasized that the political and diplomatic engagement is the most sustainable solution to the conflict in the Eastern DRC. It has also directed for the resumption of direct negotiations and dialogue with all state and non-state parties, including the M23 rebels. The summit has also mandated the chiefs of defense forces to meet within 5 days and provide technical direction. Unconditional ceasefire has been called by both regional organizations, SADC and the East African Community. Now, the retired Lesotho Defense Attaché to African Union and the author of the book, The Status Quo, is urging African leaders to urgently silence the guns across the continent. Now, enjoying the title as Reverend Ngedi, he says that African resources should not become its curse.
He prides himself as the colonel, the reverend, and the diplomat.
The PSC.
But now, in his early retirement era, he wants to share his experiences and knowledge to see Africa silence the guns.
You will know the flagship of the African Union, silencing the gun by the year 2020. Mm-hmm. It has passed. We are now, it has been extended to 2030. But the guns are sounding like they have never sounded before. You go to East, you go to the Great Lakes, you go to G5 Sahel, they are sounding like they have never sounded before. Now, the center of focus today, as we speak, DRC. And I was listening to former president of Kenya, President Kenyatta. He was saying the African leaders must change their mindset towards handling security issues. He said a simple statement that there are more bullets and bombs than pills in Africa. That is budget dedicated by African leaders to weapons. Yeah. Now forgetting about the lives of the people. Pills. Now President Trump, after shortly taking office, he has locked, and there's panic. There's panic all over. There's panic all over. Our African leaders, it is time that they must view security in other way.
The colonel has further extended his condolences to peacekeeping soldiers who have fallen in the Eastern DRC conflict.
People are thinking it is only South Africans that has lost lives. And may I, at this point in time, convey my heartfelt condolences to all the troop contributing countries, more especially our neighbor South Africa, for those soldiers who has paid the ultimate price. How I hope these lives will bring the new thinking to our leaders. 2 weeks they will be in African Union. In African Union. So I think Africa needs to think the other way around. These resources are giving us problems. They will not give us peace. They will not give us peace. You go any where there's these conflicts, it's a matter of resources.
Colonel Nkedi believes that the entities like Military Staff Committee that was established in line with peace and security protocol should be given more space to play as advisors in areas of conflict. Rapelang Khatebe, SABC News, Masogolo Sud.
Now, Hamas has released 3 Israeli hostages after 491 days in captivity. Ahad Ben Ami and Eli Sharabi were both taken hostage from Kibbutz Be'eri during the cross-border Hamas-led attack on October the 7th, 2023, while all Levi had been abducted that day from the Nova Music Festival. The 3 men all appeared thin, weak and pale and in worse condition than the 18 hostages who had previously been freed under the truce agreed last month to end the 15-month war in Gaza. They were held at gunpoint, paraded onto a stage while surrounded by armed and masked Hamas militants. Dozens of armed Hamas militants were deployed at the site in Deir al-Balah, in central Gaza, as the men were handed over to the International Committee of the Red Cross, which was to transport them to Israeli forces in Gaza. In exchange, Israel will release 183 Palestinian prisoners, some convicted of involvement in attacks that killed dozens of people, and including 18 serving life sentences and 111 detained in Gaza during the war. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with the week ahead here on the SABC News channel. Now, let's have a look at stories that made headlines in the Sunday newspapers, shall we? And let's start with the Sunday Times this afternoon, headlined, "Thanks but no thanks Trump. Sunday Times lining up sub-headlines there in that big story. Afrikaner groups wary of refugee offer. Top-level delegation heads to U.S. for talks. Israel court case, the real problem for U.S. Sunday Times reporting there. Government, opposition parties and top business leaders are scrambling for a quick resolution to the breakdown in relations with Washington following a week of high drama. The Sunday Times understands that several proposals were made to the government this week in a series of meetings to discuss the crisis. They include making compromises in response to demands that have been made by the U.S. and its close ally, that is Israel. There, U.S. President Donald Trump, in an executive order, so to say, signed on Friday, cited Expropriation Act, South Africa's genocide case against Israel and its close ties with Iran as among the reasons he was halting all aid and assistance. And that is one of the leading stories in the Sunday Times. They also have many Afrikaners unimpressed with U.S. President Donald Trump's surprise offer to grant them refugee status. You'll find those stories in the Sunday Times. Now, let's have a look at the Sunday Tribune. They are also leading with the AfriForum and solidarity story following that media briefing yesterday, reporting Trump's SA refugee offer rejected. They are further reporting that leaders of the Afrikaner community, including farmers, have flatly rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's call for their members who are aggrieved with South African government policies to move to his country on refugee status. The international society woke up to shocking news yesterday that Trump had acted on his threats to punish South Africa for what he called South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people, that is Afrikaners, very badly. Trump had on Friday signed an executive order which stated that his country would promote the resettlement of Afrikaner refugees, escaping government-sponsored race-based discrimination, including racial discriminatory property confiscation. You'll find that full details of that story in the Sunday Tribune. Now, moving on to the news, next newspaper headline is found in the Sunday World. There, it's written by Nziligazi wa Afrika. The story on page 5, M23 fighters at first refused to hand over fallen soldiers. Sunday World reporting the bodies of South African National Defense Force soldiers who were killed in fierce gun battles with the M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo are finally heading home after authorities fought a tough battle to repatriate them after the insurgents refused to hand them over and started playing some dirty tricks, quote unquote. The Sunday World can reveal that the South African authorities asked the United Nations to intervene after M23 rebels captured the second city and allegedly became cocky and hostile towards South African soldiers, and they are quoting a mole in the defense force there, saying they tried to hold the bodies of our 14 soldiers hostage after they successfully captured Goma and seized control of Namibian, a mining town in Kivu province. That story found in the Sunday World, and those are the stories making headlines in the Sunday newspapers. Now, 13 people have been killed in a road crash between a bakkie and a taxi on the R40 road in Hoedspruit, Limpopo. The cause of the crash is yet to be determined. Katya Wanyoni has more.
We understand at this stage that they were traveling from Windhoek in Mpumalanga to their places of work in Hoedspruit when that horrific accident happened. Preliminary investigations in Kolisi reveal that it was a head-on collision. We know that it involved a bakkie as well as a minibus taxi. 10 people from the minibus taxi died after it caught fire and was engulfed in flames, whereas 3 from the bakkie died and 3 others were then injured and transported initially to Tinzwalo Hospital in the Mpumalanga province. We understand now that they were then readmitted at a hospital in Pretoria, while investigations are still continuing, Kolisi, following that crash which occurred just a minute before 7 a.m. on Saturday. Let me bring in the MEC for Transport and Community Safety in Limpopo, Mayor Violet Mate, to just explain to us regarding the latest. Thank you for your time at this morning. Of course, this is quite a sad moment and devastating news for the families of the people that lost their lives, MEC.
Thank you, and let me take this opportunity to greet all the viewers at home and also to pass our sincere condolences to all the families and friends of all the people that perished on that accident, and also to pass our condolences on behalf of Limpopo province to the other province, which is Mpumalanga, where those people were coming from. In the morning yesterday, we received the call that there is an accident at R40 next to Kapama and Hoedspruit. So I went there. When I arrived, I found that 13 people have died on that accident after the taxi has caught fire and the other bike caught fire. So in the bike there were 6 Indians who were coming from Hoedspruit side, and the taxi was coming from Akonuk going to Hoedspruit. So they collided after the taxi was overtaking. So one of the occupants in that taxi was a young child who was going to school in Hoedspruit because it was a sports day yesterday. So the 9th includes the taxi driver and the 8 people who were working at one fruit and veg at Hoedspruit called La Bamba. So that's what happened, and all the 13 bodies have been taken to Letaba Hospital for further processing. But late in the evening, I received a number and the names of all those that perished on the accident, the 13 of them. But the police and the hospital management are going to continue with the identification of the body through the DNA. So we'll be waiting for the report from the hospital management as well as the law enforcement.
And MEC, sadly, the occupants of the minibus taxi were bent beyond recognition. As you mentioned, that you are still awaiting a report from the people that are investigating this particular accident. Do you have any idea of the time frames as to when families can then start, being informed and identification processes, MEC, starting to take place?
Yesterday, all the family members were there at the scene. They were all there, and they even went to the police station to give the police all the names of all the people that died on the scene. And even the Indian community were there also to go and identify that people. But all the processes of identifying who are those people are going to be starting tomorrow, because those people bent beyond recognition, the 13 of them. Even the 3 that are transferred to hospital are bent also. But we don't know about their condition for now.
And we understand you also had a strategy meeting to figure out a way forward. Can you take us through the points that you discussed in terms of how maybe these families are going to be assisted with both yourselves as the Limpopo provincial government, perhaps working with the Mpumalanga province?
All of that one will be communicated by the Premier of the province, since we made her aware that there is an accident. So far, the only person from Mpumalanga was only the ward councillor from Greenville who was there. So from tomorrow, we'll be communicating with Mpumalanga to make sure that those people are fair and also are given a fair send-off by both the families and the province. But we'll be there to support them.
MEC Violet Mate, thank you very much for your time. Of course, Nkolisi, devastating news affecting these 13 families of the individuals that lost their lives following that crash between a minibus taxi as well as a bikie. The MEC mentioning that there was a learner in the minibus taxi who was going to school to attend sports day, indicating that the Premier of the province, Dr. Poppy Ramathuba, will communicate further as to how the provincial governments of the 2 provinces plan then to intervene here and assist the families of the deceased.
My colleague Katla Wanyoni there earlier on. Now, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa has spent 3 days listening to oral submissions on the future of satellite services in the country. The hearings are part of a public participation process to develop a new satellite regulatory framework with clear rules for potential investors. The process is carried out under the ICASA Act to establish procedures for authorizing user terminals operations in South Africa and to review spectrum fees. Elon Musk's SpaceX was one of the companies scheduled to make an oral submission before the regulator, but the company's representative withdrew from the verbal submission.
Several stakeholders, including local and international satellite companies, as well as mobile operators and civil organizations, spent the last week weighing in on the proposed satellite framework to the ICASA panel. The regulator says new emerging technologies may require a totally different licensing framework, with the hearings chairperson Thabisa Fai highlighting the importance of the inputs from industry role players in guiding the country's approach.
We are still on a fact-finding mission. We are not making regulations. We're still trying to just find out what is the best practice and what our stakeholders would like to see. So the most compelling issues that have come out have been generally around the authorization versus registration, the blanket licensing framework, and then I think, here and there we have heard about, the HDG and HDI requirements. We've also been able to use this platform to provide clarification just in terms of what this means for other ICT markets, like terrestrial markets, like broadcasting markets.
Visiting allowed mixed views on the country's satellite licensing infrastructure and compliance. Vodacom's Maxime Naidu was amongst those who raised concerns around fairness and transformation of the sector.
One of the most important things that we believe the authority needs to remember is that it has to protect South Africa's own socio-economic interests. And we believe that that has been consistent in terms of the authority's views. In the application, however, it's important to note that the ATU framework, it can't be applied without consideration of the local legislation, regulation and the market impacts as well.
The Global Satellite Operators Association was amongst international stakeholders making representations. The organization's Lyndon Peters says they represent 70 global companies that are calling for the easing of spectrum fees that promote satellite services.
Our understanding is the existing framework remains in place. What we are looking to do is to make minor adjustments to the existing framework to make satellite services more available to the broader public. So, of course, we recognize terrestrial operators have spent a lot of money. They're looking to protect that investment, but we don't believe that this process threatens their investment in any way.
Elon Musk's company SpaceX withdrew their participation at the oral hearings, but the company made a written submission. In the written submission, the parent company to Starlink called for an overhaul of the licensing rules to remove BEE equity as a requirement, arguing that this discourages much-needed foreign direct investment. This was supported by local lobby group AfriForum. The organization's Ernest van Zyl says Starlink has the potential to bridge the digital gap between urban and rural areas in South Africa.
Aside from the fact that race-based regulations blocking Starlink are unjustifiable, this technology would be a massive benefit to millions in South Africa. And Starlink's technology will provide rural communities and the agriculture sector with much-needed stable internet connection, which will assist with education, business, and most importantly, security.
Starlink has a presence in Botswana, Mozambique, Nigeria, and Zambia. The hearings chairperson emphasized the regulator's role in the policy process to ensure equity equivalence.
This is not about SpaceX or Starlink in any particular way. Should they want to participate in the sector, then they would follow the usual licensing processes that exist for everybody who wants to participate in the ICT matter. ICASA unfortunately doesn't regulate through the media, so until we receive a formal policy directive from the minister, we cannot respond to the minister's media publication around equity equivalence.
ICASA received over 50 written submissions that were supplemented by some oral representations. The regulator is looking to complete and make available their findings from this process in April this year. What leads from here? The ICASA panel will go back and analyze both the written and oral submissions for consideration and move to publish a findings document on a proposed new licensing framework for satellite services. Well, this is the Communications Minister looks at the 30% BEE requirement for the licensing process under the Electronic Communications Act. Katlego Logodi, SABC News in Centurion.
Now, survivors of rape are often threatened by either perpetrators or their families to not report the case to the police. This is according to a 35-year-old rape survivor in the Nokana near Zirast in the Northwest Province. The woman, who was allegedly raped by two men on the 30th of December last year, demands justice. She says the alleged perpetrator's mother offered her 6,000 rand to not open a case against her son. Though she ended up registering the case with the local police, she is astonished that the wheels of the law are moving at a slow pace. Now joining us on a telephone line is Lisa Vetten, who is Research Associate of Southern Center for Inequality Studies. Lisa, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks so much for joining us. What advice do you have for survivors of rape that are threatened by either perpetrators or their families to not report this case to the police?
Well, there are a couple of options I think that are available to women who are in this situation, because you simply cannot be stopped by others from going ahead with your lawful right to go and lay charges at a police station. And attempts to prevent people from doing so is in of itself a crime in its own right, interfering with justice. So I think in this situation or similar situations, you usually have to start with the station commander as a complaint to and asking them to please call their detectives into line in order to investigate. But if that doesn't bring any joy, then one typically approaches the provincial commissioner or the provincial head of the Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit, who are responsible for investigating sexual offences in the province. If at the same time it's also useful for somebody to go to the Provincial Department of Community Safety, because they do have some limited complaints and oversight mechanisms in relation to the police, so it's important to go to them and ask them to intervene on the basis that the police are not doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah. And then, of course, another option is to get one's own legal representation.
Yeah, Lisa, are such instances rife? Do you come across them often?
You know, I think one certainly hears complaints about women being turned away. I think another very common complaint that you hear is about the quality of the police investigation. And, you know, of course, if it's a very poor investigation, then that's effectively like never having taken your report seriously anyway, because no effort has gone into it. So that's certainly a problem, and we've already had one constitutional court case. The case of Andy Skawa against the South African police, for example, where the Constitutional Court found that the police had not done an adequate job in investigating her matter.
Yeah, and Lisa, what are some of the common emotional and psychological challenges that rape survivors face when they feel this discouraged and threatened?
Well, you know, I think it's a profound effect on your safety, because one of the reasons you report is because you would like to see, you would like justice, but you would also like to feel safe. You would like that person removed from your vicinity so they no longer threaten you. I mean, even when they threaten you, just the fact they're knowing that they're around leaves you feeling profoundly unsafe. So the fact that that alleged perpetrators are not arrested, that criminal justice process systems are not followed, leaves you feeling profoundly unsafe and worried that this might happen again. Then, of course, there's a kind of cynicism that can occur when you see all these politicians and others saying how seriously the country takes gender-based violence and everybody must do something about it and victims must speak out. And then the victim has a direct experience of not being taken seriously when they do speak out. And it erodes confidence and trust, I think, in state institutions when they do not take women's complaints seriously. And then, of course, there's obviously just the depression that this has happened. There's no that it appears that nobody wants to take you seriously, that there is going to be no justice for you. I think it can make it can leave them feeling as if they really don't matter, and that there is no recourse for them. And that can have obviously very serious long-term consequences in terms of one's trust and faith in others more broadly, not just in the police. That people will never believe you or take you seriously.
And Lisa, what should survivors do, really? Like, if they experience societal attitudes, stigma, you talk about victim blaming, what should they do in those incidents?
Well, at the end of the day, I don't think it's up to victims to stop victim blaming. That's our responsibility as society to go and examine our own attitudes. I think it's hard enough for survivors to try and deal with the impact on themselves of rape without also having to now be obliged to do something about society. And so that's a challenge we should be taking up. Whether we hear this coming from our friends, our family members, our colleagues, or people in government, if you see victim blaming, you should challenge it straight away. And, so that's one leg. Difficulty and really oppressive injustice that rape survivors have to deal with.
This is quite important because, survivors depend on the justice system to assist them. You spoke earlier on about victims want to see perpetrators being removed from the society. But what role does a lack of trust in the legal system or healthcare system, for example, play in discouraging these survivors?
Well, of course, it discourages others who might be who might have seen or heard about all these negative experiences. Should anything happen to somebody else, they may decide, I'm not going to report because there's absolutely no point in it. It's not going anywhere. And of course, if they don't report, then that means that fewer men may be brought into the system. There is less of a deterrent effect because people see that rape is a crime you can commit with impunity. There are no consequences. And what becomes very worrying is if you're dealing with somebody who is a serial offender, if there are no consequences, they then go on to repeat their particular kinds of actions. And then what tends to happen, as you've already seen happening in South Africa, is that community resorts to self-help. They lose all trust in the criminal justice system, don't believe it's ever going to work, and so start to take the law into their own hands. And then, when that kind of breakdown happens, you kind of lost control over violence in society.
Lisa, thanks so much for your thoughts. We appreciate it. Indeed, that was Lisa Vetten, who is Research Associate of Southern Center for Inequality Studies. Now, the week ahead continues after this short break. Do stay with us. The Kingdom of Lesotho commemorated the annual Cancer Day in Maseru on Wednesday. In line with this year's theme, United by Unique, this places people at the center of care and their stories at the heart of their conversations. Lesotho's Minister of Health, Sidibe Mochorobane, says the country has reached the 97% vaccination rate on cervical cancer, a significant step towards the cervical cancer elimination.
The studies in 2022 show that in Lesotho, breast and cervical cancer contribute to about 43% of all the cancer cases annually. This year's theme, United by Unique, aimed to highlight some of the challenges faced by cancer patients.
Not being able to attend school properly breaks our hearts. You can imagine a 10-year-old child in class 1 simply because he or she couldn't attend school because of long stays in hospital. If it could be possible, we wish to have online classes so that we don't fall behind.
And after tests, it was discovered that I have a breast cancer and it's on stage 3. And as it were, it meant that I needed to be prepared for the process of my breast removal.
My encouragement today to the caregivers is we have hope. It's not always fun, but it's worth it.
And with the ever-dwindling foreign aid support, Lesotho is forced to look within to meet its health challenges.
Every minute, 40 people are diagnosed with cancer, and they start the journey to try and overcome it or survive it. In Africa, Every 1 in 3 deaths are caused by cancer. Unfortunately, this statistic is projected to rise to about 70% in the next 15 years.
And to date, as we speak, last year, we handed over in excess of 1.9 million to Starlight Oasis of Hope to build that facility. And we continue to appeal to other corporates to also help us make sure that at least phase 2 and phase 3 of the project become a reality.
As part of its health support, UK will be sending some of its medical experts soon and urges Basotho to fully take advantage of all available opportunities to enhance their skills in dealing with cancer.
When these people come, grill them and take everything you can from them. Squeeze every piece of information from them. Everything that they have learned, make sure you get it. Because it's no good it's staying in their head and they go back home. So they will also take things from Lesotho. And they will learn things from here about how to do their work. That's part of why they come to places like the Kingdom of Lesotho.
Lesotho is at its crossroad, facing tough choices to strengthen their ailing health systems. Now every cent counts.
And we are treating our patients in South Africa. We are spending between 220 to 250 maloti to treat a patient in Bloemfontein. The past 5 weeks, we introduced a contractor on site to start the construction of the cancer center.
And the reality of the impact of the US foreign policy sparks even more robust debate.
Now I'm talking as a politician. What he has done, it has to be a wake-up call to African leaders that we should build our own systems, our own health systems that are responsive. We shouldn't rely on aid that comes from outside. Here in the country, we have agreed that now we are going to start our health insurance.
Currently, Lesotho has just under 2,000 Basotho dealing with multiple forms of cancer, but believes that its current vaccination program gives assurance to a cancer-free generation, especially in cervical cancer. Rapelang Khatebe for SABC News, Masego, Lesotho.
Further afield, at least 41 people have died in a devastating bus crash in the southern Mexico's Tabasco state, and rescue efforts are still underway. The horrific bus crash occurred when a bus collided with a vehicle and set it up in flames. The bus, carrying 48 passengers, was left a charred, skeletal wreck. Authorities reported 38 passengers and 2 drivers died, along with the bus driver. An investigation to determine the cause and whether speed limits were exceeded is ongoing. Now, Zona Mexico, one of the biggest art fairs in Latin America and which opened in Mexico City this week, concludes today. Contemporary art curators say the 21st edition of the fair has turned the city into the epicenter of art. This year, the Zona Mexico brings the works of 200 galleries from over 30 countries, and there are also talks with international experts on contemporary art. The event is part of Art Week, which features exhibitions across various parts of the city. Now, Mauritius is working to increase its international tourism numbers in 2025. Last year, the island country received about 1.5 million tourists. 9% of them were South Africans. The country boasts 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The Pravasi Ghat in Port Louis, where its indentured labor diaspora began in 1834, and Le Mans Brabant Mountain that was home to those wanting to escape slavery.
The island of Mauritius is loved by tourists for its picturesque beaches and beautiful mountain scenes. Its greenery and wide open spaces are also a draw card. The Sesosuka Ramkulam Botanic Garden is near the capital, Port Louis. The majestic natural space features over 85 varieties of palm trees from Central America, Asia, Africa, and the islands around the Indian Ocean. Some of the indigenous trees here are believed to be over 200 years old. Several trees were planted by world leaders, including former President Nelson Mandela. He planted an ebony tree in 1998, a species of tree native to Mauritius.
Nelson Mandela came to Mauritius in 1998, and he was received with all the honor the Republic of Mauritius can make to him. And among all these, very symbolically, it's very important, and this is result only for great leaders. He planted a tree in the Pamplemousse's garden, a black tree which grows only here in Mauritius, and he chose to plant this tree as a very important symbol that this land, as same as South Africa, is very important for him, and it was a great honor he made to us by planting these two trees here in Mauritius.
Leaders like the former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, former President Thabo Bester, and the former Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi also left behind trace of their visits.
Also in the garden of the State House, which is the residence of the President of the Republic of Mauritius. He planted trees there in the Pamplemousse's garden. And not a simple tree, he planted an ebony tree which is very endemic to Mauritius, which is ebony means black. For tourists who visited the Pamplemousse's garden, for example, it's like a testimony of all the great leaders who have visited Mauritius. Because as Nelson Mandela is no more here, but this remains here as a legacy that one day he came to Mauritius.
The local market in Port Louis near the gardens is also a popular tourist attraction. Londi Khatebe, SABC News, Mauritius.
You're watching The Week Ahead here on the SABC News channel. We'll continue at the top of the hour. Do stay with us. You're watching SABC News live from Johannesburg. Your headlines this hour. An award-winning Limpopo author believes teaching mathematics in vernacular will improve learners' comprehension levels.
They did kill him. Bluntly, they killed him. We cannot hesitate it. It was a mission. It has nothing to do with crime and stuff.
The Mqaga family is seeking justice and demanding answers from Police Minister Senzo Mchunu regarding the alleged police killing of their 25-year-old son. Hamas has released 3 Israeli hostages after they spent 491 days in captivity. Welcome to the second hour of The Week Ahead here on the SABC News channel. We are live with you from our SABC News studios here in Johannesburg. You are still welcome to participate in our conversations. Give us a call on our studio number 011-714-0680 or 81 or 82. It's an honor to have you with us at this hour. An award-winning Limpopo author believes teaching mathematics in vernacular will improve learners' comprehension levels. David Mafega from Vonda village near Toyando wrote a mathematics handbook for grade 7 and 8 learners in Chivenda. He says the material has been helpful for both learners and maths teachers in rural areas.
A highly skilled artisan, David Mafega is a well-known carpenter and welder, but he's in his element when he has a pen in his nimble hand, pouring out his heart onto a piece of paper. Mafega has written 10 books over the last 3 decades. The 54-year-old is also a prolific radio drama scriptwriter and has scooped several awards for his books.
I realized that there is a shortage in as far as our language is concerned. That's why I started writing these books. I started writing in 1996 with a first drama that was called Zhudokomangani.
A staunch proponent of mother tongue and culture, Mafega believes people understand issues better when they are conveyed in their mother tongue. This motivated him to write the book Chipiri Chambaro, or The Mystery of Mathematics.
What I realize is that most of our students, those who are at school, they fail to pass mathematics only just because of language barrier, if I can say that. English is not our mother tongue. So most of the people or the children at school, they fail to pass mathematics only just because of language. Even though they know what they ought to do, but they fail just because they don't understand language. That's why I started writing this in our mother tongue.
Mafega says he's receiving positive feedback on his book from mathematics teachers and learners.
Most of the people that they are busy using it, they say this is very good. The strategy that I'm using is very best. Even though it is a new thing unto the people, but those who are using it, they said, if we started doing mathematics in our language, we were totally being very far.
A retired science and mathematics teacher who runs extra classes for learners in his village has hailed the book as beneficial for his work.
The study guide is very helpful since it is written in vernacular, in Chivenda. Learners are able to interpret some terminology on how to do or to work out something in mathematics better than when they are taught in English.
Meanwhile, Mafega is also a small-scale farmer who is passionate about food security in rural areas. Rutano Bobori, SABC News, in Vondwe.
Now to this devastating story, the Mxaka family from Mamolweni village in Ngeleni in the Eastern Cape is demanding answers from Police Minister Senzo Mchunu about the brutal killing of their son, allegedly at the hands of police. The deceased 25-year-old Lulamela Mxaka was coming from a funeral with his family when he was allegedly shot by the police.
The family is still reeling in shock following the death of Mxaka. Mxaka, who was driving with his family members, including his mother, was allegedly stopped by heavily armed police. It is alleged that the heavily armed police just shot at him in front of his family without any exchange of bitter words. My son was shot and the car rolled down the hill. It uprooted trees and rocks. I had to try to pull the handbrake up because I could see that my son was lying against the steering wheel dead. After they shot him on the back of his ear, I was praying, calling for the name of Jesus, trying to reach the handbrake, and the car hit the ground and stopped. The family is still asking for answers of what could be the motive behind the killing of their son. It's very painful and traumatic because a policewoman, a lady who was with a male policeman, drove off with the police that killed my son. I would think that as a woman she would have helped me to call an ambulance. She would have been with me to seek help because they had already killed my son, but she decided to leave.
They did kill him. Bluntly, they killed him. We cannot hesitate it. It was a mission. It has nothing to do with crime and stuff. A mission was to kill him, and they did it. Because in no way that you will discuss and talk to a person, he would respond to you calmly and stuff. Then you just tell the boy to come out of the car. When he start opening the door, not even a movement, shot him bluntly. And my son was looking directly to him, the way he was lying on that steering. It's a murder. It has nothing to do with law.
An elderly woman that arrived on the scene explains what she encountered.
I saw
Nomveliso running towards our car and she shouted my name. She asked me to pray for her son not to die. My son Lulamela can't die. I asked her what happened and where is Lulamela. She pointed towards the bushes and I saw a vehicle. She told me that Lulamela has been shot dead by the police. Local traditional leaders have called for thorough investigation into the incident. What is very traumatizing in this incident is that the government admitted that the people who killed the boy is indeed the police, government employees, but the government has not met the family to talk to the family and also try to meet the family halfway in terms of funeral arrangements. We don't know how we are going to bury him. They were coming from the funeral when he was shot by the police. IPID spokesperson Paladi Shuping has acknowledged that the case of murder is under investigation, as it is alleged that the police were involved in the action. Shuping says they will give a full response after investigation has been finalized. I am Kululeko Nyembezi, SABC News, Ngaleni.
The state's readiness to go to trial in the Thabo Bester escape case has been called into question after it shared new evidence with the defense. A new trial date was set in a virtual court sitting on the 13th of January, which pushed the trial date to July. Newly presented information from the state will now form part of the docket. Bester and co-accused will appear in court tomorrow.
Bester's prison escape trial was originally set down for the 10th of February this year. All the parties had indicated their readiness except for the convicted serial rapist and murderer Bester. In December last year, the state requested another pre-trial hearing to address several issues, including Bester's pending fair trial application in the Free State High Court. The state has also cited imminent judgment expected in Dr. Nandi Pamagudumana's case in the Supreme Court of Appeal. The defense has expressed disappointment.
If that matter then gets postponed to a date that is already agreed. Remember that we had predetermined dates, the 10th, and then we also had the 21st as the second date, for continuation of the trial. But obviously, if we hadn't even commenced with the trial, that talks to unreasonable delays, and a person who is in custody, inevitably is impacted adversely.
Mutlong is also concerned about what he says is the adverse impact on the postponement on Magudumana. She has been in custody since her arrest in April 2023.
Now, on the 13th of January, and if you now, bring forth, additional information, additional documents, I'm not too sure if that means that, there were certain aspects of the case which the state didn't have on at its disposal at the time, and that they became aware of them later on. I think it's something that obviously took us by surprise, but we have complied with their requests that we should uplift those documents, and we have done so.
A legal commentator says more delays should be expected in this matter.
If the judgment favor him, remember we'll have to postpone the matter again for him to prepare thoroughly for the trial and for him to come with a legal representative. But if it happens that it's not favoring him, the judgment, then it's still going to be a delay again, because now he will go another avenue of law, which is going to make an appeal for the decision again. So basically it's going to be more and more delay that is going to come. We're not going to see this case proceeding from the trial anytime soon from now.
The National Prosecuting Authority has reiterated that it is ready to proceed with trial.
As the National Prosecuting Authority, we are fully prepared for the trial of Thabo Bester, Nandipha Maguduman, as well as their co-accused in this matter. This case is of significant public interest, and we remain committed to ensuring that justice is served. The state has gathered comprehensive evidence and is ready to present its case before the court. We respect the judicial processes and will allow it to unfold without speculation. Our focus remains on accountability and upholding the rule of law. The National Prosecuting Authority can confirm that we are ready to proceed with this matter.
Meanwhile, Magudumana is awaiting a judgment from the Supreme Court of Appeal. In that matter, she's appealing against the Free State High Court's order which dismissed her application to have her arrest in Tanzania declared unlawful. Magudumana was arrested alongside Bester in April 2023 on charges relating to aiding his escape from the Mangaung Correctional Center in Bloemfontein in May 2022. Kamagelo Siekwi, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Staying with crime stories, Mpumalanga Education Department is under investigation for alleged irregularities. The Special Investigating Unit is probing alleged inflated invoices and payments to service providers who supplied some boarding schools with food.
Yet another Mpumalanga department under the spotlight. This time, the awarding of food supply tender at 6 boarding schools. SIU identify irregularities in the payment of the contracts.
The SIU has now started this investigation, and what it will look into is to investigate and recover losses that might have been incurred by the department, to look at who was doing all these wrong things, and to forward disciplinary referrals to the department when the need arises.
Many learners depend on the school nutrition program for a decent meal. Opposition parties have welcomed the investigation, and they want the investigations to be extended to other departments.
We have written and submitted a letter of complaint to the Office of the Public Protector Advocate Koleka Kaleka to intervene and investigate the matter regarding the interference on tender processes by the MEC for Education, Ms. Catherine Dlamini, who upon her arrival in the department instructed officials to remove some companies and were replaced with 6 of her choice. Late November, a case of corruption was opened with Newspeed SAPS, but at the moment, we are waiting for the Public Protector's investigation outcome. And we hope and believe that her office will deal with this matter accordingly and will stop the corrupt MEC from doing as she wishes in the department.
I have been for many years wondering about the school nutrition and the boarding schools food that's going there. We have a specific incident where during COVID, there was a school that was receiving food without children being in the school.
In October last year, SIU investigated the affairs of the Provincial Department of Health. Parties have called the Premier to take action against those fingered. Premier Mandla Ndlovu has welcomed the latest investigation.
So as part of their work, they will investigate. We request our institutions, we request MECs, HODs, all our officials to cooperate. We'll get the report at the right time with clear recommendations and remedial actions. What is very important is for people to know that we are going to respect the findings of our institutions and we are going to act.
The SIU investigation is expected to last for 12 months. Nhlamulo Mabasa, SABC News, Mbombela.
Welcome back. As of March the 1st, 2025, the national minimum wage rate is set to rise from 27 Rand 58 cent to 28 Rand 79 cents per hour. The announcement was made this week by Employment and Labour Minister Noma Meth. The department ascribed the increase to the rise in inflation and stated that it applies to all workers, including farm and domestic workers. We examine today what this implies for the typical South African and whether it will improve the quality of life for our people. Director and Chief Economist of Econometrics, Dr. Azar Jamin, joins us. But before that, let's hear what some of you had to say.
People are suffering. We've got people who sleep without food and wake up without food. Other children, they didn't even attend the school because their parents are not working, their parents can't afford school fees, their parents can't afford to buy them food. The worst part of it, even children, they don't go to school, but the worst part of it, they can't afford to buy their children food.
It's not going to make any difference because like with what's happening in our country, the inflation, the cost of living is very high. You can't be expecting to pay. It's total mockery. You are mocking people. So we've been exploited.
Incane mawubheka ukuthi phela labantu laba bahola 28 rand per hour. Bakhulisa abantwana njengawo wonke umuntu, banemizi, banama responsibilities afanayo nabanye abantu. So incane yona incane.
Yeah, incane kakhulu le mali. Eqinisweni incane. Ngoba kumele lo muntu abheke umndeni wakhe. Abantwana esikolweni kumele balale bedlile ngapha ama-grocery ayakhuphuka, ipetrol ziyakhuphuka, so esimoni samanje lo mali incane kakhulu ngeke yenze nomehluko omncane nje kuphela, yabona. Incane kakhulu kuyamele at least kufakwe engathi kuyabonakala kancane.
What's that? 28 rand. We are struggling. Food is too high, transport, everything is too high. When you get paid today, tomorrow you don't have a cent. You have to go and borrow. So it means you are working to hand to mouth. That's what we are living now at the moment. So they are the one living their life because they earn whatever the amount that it's suitable for them. But for us who are down there, we are suffering.
We are struggling. Like the cost of living is too high now for 21 rand, 28 rand. I think we need more and above that, maybe 100 rand, yeah, so that we can be able to survive.
Interesting thoughts there, but Dr. Azar Jamin will help me unpack this. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us on the show. A very good afternoon to you. Minister of Employment and Labour, Noma Meth, announcing earlier in the week that the new national minimum wage is set at 28 Rand 79 cent per hour, up by 4.4% from 27.58 cents in 2024. Given the state of the country, is this a realistic approach to bridge the poverty gap?
You've got to bear in mind that the government is fairly short of money, that the unemployment rate unofficially is about 42%. And that therefore those people who are earning money, whatever the income is, should regard themselves as being fortunate in actually having a job that they can actually earn money with. What this 4.4% increase does is simply keep those who were earning the minimum wage on the same level in terms of what they can access in terms of goods and services, as was the case last year. If there hadn't been this adjustment, then surely if people were receiving the same minimum wage last year and then this year they would be a little worse off because overall prices have gone up by 4.4%. So all this does is adjust for that so as to keep them on the same real level. But you also have to think of the 42% of those who don't even have a job and who would do anything to have this 5,000 Rand per year, per month income that is implicit in the minimum wage.
Yeah, thanks for raising that, because I'm sure everyone is asking, who does this minimum wage apply to? Are there exceptions, Doctor?
I think there may be one or two exceptions, but by and large, it applies to all those who are employed in the formal sector that the government can actually lay their hands on in terms of identifying that they have a job. Obviously, in the informal sector, by its nature, the minimum wage doesn't apply because people are not properly employed. But for wherever people are employed, this does apply, and businesses that employ such people are obliged to pay this minimum wage, and it includes domestic workers. There are some differences. Some categories of worker have a slightly different minimum wage. I think agriculture is at a slightly lower level. But that is the case, yeah.
And in layman's terms, what should those earning this minimum wage be earning on a monthly basis? And does it, does the same amount apply across all board?
As I say, it is a minimum wage that applies to most industries, but there are some exceptions. I think domestic workers and agricultural workers have a different minimum wage, but to everyone else who is employed, this is the wage that they're obliged to get. And there's a big controversy because there are those who believe that if you didn't have this minimum wage, a lot of businesses would be willing to employ more workers or employ workers at all that they are now unwilling to do, given the level of the minimum wage that some people regard as being too high to make it affordable for businesses to actually employ those people.
And now COSATU has urged the Department of Employment and Labour to increase its enforcement powers and strengthen the role of labour inspectors. Are we seeing this happen, Doctor? And are these wages currently being enforced properly by employers?
Well, in some areas they are being enforced properly, but you've also got to realize that when you level a stick like that on business, they are just going to avoid wanting to employ people, period, because they won't want to have to deal with such regulations. So, there are pros and cons to increase in the enforcement of such laws in the country. It's a tricky situation, and one understands why it came in, because the working class does not want to be subjected to exploitation that they felt during the apartheid era. But at the same time, it is acting as a big deterrent to employment creation, and is one of the reasons why South Africa has the highest unemployment rate of any country in the world. In many African countries, people would be only too happy to work for half that salary and do so, and therefore the unemployment rate is that much lower.
And you talk about exploitation, Doctor. How can employers ensure compliance with the revised minimum wage?
Well, the only way that they can ensure compliance is to actually abide by the minimum wage, but in certain instances it's sufficient to drive them out of business, and then the unemployment rate naturally increases as a consequence.
And the government introducing the implementation of the National Minimum Wage Act in 2019, has this been a working formula from your observation?
Well, I ask you whether you've identified any big improvement in the employment situation in the country since 2019, and the answer is no, in fact, the opposite. Therefore, it has really done very little to enhance employment. Has it helped those who have jobs? Possibly, because you have a situation in South Africa where the level of consumer spending has remained far better and grown far more than the economy as a whole. So those people who have jobs have been doing that much better than everyone else, but there are almost half the population that doesn't have jobs and are reliant on the child support grant, or worse still, the social relief for distress grant of 370 Rand per month. And I think one needs to reflect on the fact that the social relief for distress grant is about 7% of the minimum wage. 7%.
Yeah, indeed. Doctor, thanks so much for your time. Indeed, we appreciate those insights. That was Director and Chief Economist of Econometrics, Dr. Azza Jamin, talking to us about the new minimum wage that will be in effect as from the 1st of March. Now, the week ahead continues after this short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Sophiatown residents retrace history as they commemorate a painful past. This weekend marks 70 years since the forced removals of hundreds of families from Sophiatown in Johannesburg. In remembrance, the Don Matera Legacy Foundation, in collaboration with the Vets History Workshop, officially launched the Don Matera Mobile Exhibition. The exhibit brings history to life through the lens of the late Don Matera's memoir, Memory is the Weapon, shedding light on the impact of the forced removals. SABC News senior reporter Hazina Gori attended the event.
7 decades ago on this specific day, the residents of Sophiatown in Johannesburg woke up to an unexpected visit from the apartheid army, forcing them to move from their homes and the community that they created to areas that were foreign to them. This was part of the Group Areas Act under the apartheid regime. We're here today at the mobile exhibition launch that remembers the resistance and the memories of those that lived in this specific community. Sophiatown was known for its vibrant culture, its place of activism and arts, but a community that was quite diverse in its aura. It was known as the Chicago of South Africa. Today I'm with two residents who lived here at that time. Michael, thank you so much for speaking to me. Let's start with your memory of that day 70 years ago. What do you remember and what's your recollection of the feelings that you went through at that moment being forcefully removed from this specific area?
Okay, the 9th of February 1955 was on a Wednesday. Dr. Verwoerd was so clever, he told the people that they will be moved on the Thursday, but then they turned up on the Wednesday unexpectedly. It was a rainy day, but very softly. I think it was tears that was falling for the people. And as we got up, the street from Gibson right up to Newlands was covered with police. And I can clearly remember the Fatherland newspaper that afternoon showed Dr. Verwoerd standing with a phone with the headlines, 8 dogs of Sophiatown.
And now looking back 70 years later, has Sophiatown ever, gone back to what it was and the space that it had and the memories that it had?
It does. What I remember is we had a hall in Annandale Street called Matabe Hall, where all the activities took place, like dancing, boxing things and like that. And I remember the boxers from the Sophiatown, the Michaelas, Harry and Alec, the Foys, Twala. And I remember the brass bands playing every Sunday evening from Annandale up to Gertie Street. And as they go along, people join them and they all started clapping and kudum, kudum, hele, kudum, kudum, kudum.
How important are exhibitions like today and commemorations like today for the youth of South Africa and as we look forward into the future?
Well, I can tell the youth that they missed out a lot, because that time it was time of education. Everybody used to read, the schools were there were evening schools for people who couldn't go to the day schools. So that's really what I think the youth are missing out today.
Thank you so much. That was one of the residents recollecting their moments, really describing that day, that Wednesday morning, saying it was softly raining. The area of Sophiatown was memorialized and remembered by writings of many different writers and poets, Don Matera being one of them. And many of us know of Sophiatown through that words that we remember. And I want to bring in the sister of Don Matera, Grace. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's start with your recollection of life here in Sophiatown and what was it like pre-1955?
Pre-1955, what I can remember
is that I was 10 years old at the time, and there was love in the community. Black, white, all the nations, Indians, Chinese people. And you know, what happened here, we can never forget it. They've destroyed a way of life for a special breed of people. People from Sophiatown. No caliber. We were people living together and enjoying life. I remember as a small child, I was 10 years old, and this big guy came, Madiba. They used to call us Stapora because my grandfather was Italian. I sat on his shoulder. I don't know what happened to that photo. In a protest against Mr. Verwoerd and his big guns and his big trucks. But they put us out in any case, or we would all have perished that day. When they came for my grandfather's house, I have never seen my grandfather cry, being this proud Italian old man. My grandfather cried. He cried. Papa Mia cried. And I'll never forget it, because my grandfather said, for the woman, the kiss. For the man, the knife. And men don't cry. But what I witnessed that day, I still have it in the gut when I think about what happened. But they didn't silence us. Some went to jail. Some went on protesting. That is who we are from Sophiatown.
Many of us were introduced to Sophiatown, or we know Sophiatown to the writings of your brother. Yes. And how important is it for the youth, to be involved in the arts and the culture and using it as a way of protest?
Yes, the youth must be informed. The youth must be taught. If our schools could implement arts and culture, then all this will come out. My brother has led a multitude of young men and women and told them about Sophiatown. Those people are all adults now. Hopefully, it will be carried back to their children.
One of the big topics of discussion recently has been the land expropriation bill. As someone who was forcefully moved from their home, do you feel enough is being done by government to redress the inequalities that took place in Sophiatown and various other communities across the country?
Yes, definitely. The government should put it right. Because, the ANC is in power, DA and whoever. They must put it right. There's people that applied in 95, 96 to be compensated for what they have lost. Those people are still not getting their money for their properties, even if it's a meager, even if it's a little bit. We'd expect the government to do that. Our yard had a big house, another big house, and about 3 or 4 cottages in the same yard, because the Matera clan all lived together. And we had a space in between where the buses parked. So an injustice was done to us, because where they put us after Sophiatown, my grandfather had to sell his buses. You understand what I'm saying? Because where will you get a yard with such a big yard, a house with such a big yard, where you can put 20 buses in? Morrisina bus service, it was bought over by Patco.
This is just some of the recollections that we are getting from those that lived here. Grace telling us that she was a young 10-year-old when the forced evictions took place 70 years ago. Today we are here at the launch of the mobile exhibition in commemoration and in memories of those that resisted, but also those that were forcefully removed, but their memories still living on through the works of various different artists, poets and activists that continued for that fight for justice even now till today.
Welcome back. The Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa, HSFSA, is gearing up to commemorate the much anticipated celebration of Valentine's Month. The 14th of February is the Valentine's Day, one of the most famed celebration days on the global calendar. The Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa will be commemorating this day and month with a difference compared to the commercial fanfare. It will deploy a nationwide on a mission being to reduce the burden of cardiovascular disease, heart disease, strokes, and the associated risk factors. Shonisani Nepalama, who is Heart Foundation Nutrition Lead, joins us for more. Shonisani, thanks so much for joining us. Indeed, can you just elaborate on this particular campaign? Please tell our viewers about the HFSA's Valentine's Month campaign, if you could.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having the Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa. Yes, the Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa will be celebrating Valentine. That's coming on the 14th of February. We want to encourage South Africans to show love, but not to their partners, but also to their hearts and the overall well-being. So this month's Valentine campaign, it's focusing on loving your heart as well as your health as a whole. Because if we love our heart as well as our health, we will reduce our risk of getting cardiovascular disease. And also we want to promote healthy behaviors and to raise funds for our foundation. Throughout this month, we'll be taking part in various activities which include sports as well as tournaments, trade activation, as well as co-programs to promote Valentine campaign.
Now, Shonisani, can you just elaborate on the thematic expression in relation to the 2025 Foundation's campaign strategy?
This Valentine season, the Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa, it's spreading a message of love, not just for our partners, but for our hearts and our overall well-being. So our 2025 campaign, it focuses on the powerful connection between love, self-care, and good health. We all know that taking care of our physical health is crucial, but our emotional self-care is also very important. So by prioritizing love and self-love, we can nurture both our physical and our emotional well-being. So this month as well, we also want to raise awareness about the risk factors that are associated with cardiovascular disease. So this includes high blood pressure, diabetes, and unhealthy behaviors like excessive drinking, smoking, and poor nutrition, as they also contribute to heart disease. So we are leveraging on iconic imaginary and symbolism of Valentine's Day. We aim to raise awareness as well as to inspire action for people to be able to take care of their heart.
And you mentioned introducing several programs and activities for development as well as fundraising across several touch points. Just what are you aiming to achieve with the deployment of your Valentine's program?
So this Valentine's season, we are commemorating, the Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa is commemorating 45 years commitment to promoting cardiovascular health. So our mission is to prevent premature death that are caused by heart disease and stroke, and to encourage healthy lifestyle. So this Valentine, we want to achieve this by sending our experts, such as dietitian, our health promotions officers, will be engaging with the public nationwide, sharing life-saving information, promoting health behaviors, as well as to do screening so that people can be able to know their values for blood pressure, blood glucose, cholesterol, as well as BMI, because changing how we eat or our behaviors can help to reduce the chances of getting heart disease and stroke by 80%.
Then can you talk to us more about the proceeds that will be raised? Where are they going? I know that there is that much needed facilitation of life-saving health risk assessments, health talks and campaigns. Just talk to us more about that.
Our health promotions officers, as well as our experts, they will be going to different places like malls, tournaments, as well as hospital. We will be also going to the school where we'll be raising awareness on how people can make people can make behavior changes, such as consuming a good diet, being part of physical activities, reducing stress, so that they can decrease their risk of cardiovascular disease. So we will be in different provinces like KZN, in Western Cape, in Cape Town, and all other surrounding provinces, and also in Gauteng we will be also having activities, as well as in Eastern Cape in Gqeberha.
And Shonisani, I understand, and you might be aware, I mean, the point that cardiovascular and cerebrovascular conditions, or CVD in short, are the leading causes of death and disability within the non-communicable disease cluster in South Africa. And it's responsible as well for almost 1 in 6 deaths, claiming more lives than that of all cancers combined. How are you hoping to mitigate all those factors, using this campaign as a focal point?
Yes. We will be, throughout, like today, we will be doing different interviews throughout in radios, TVs, as well as in different places, even on social media. We will be teaching people on how they can consume a healthy diet that is low in fat, low in salt, low in sugar, and high in fiber, because diet plays a significant role when it comes to developing stroke. We will also be promoting physical activity, because exercising for 150 minutes a week, it helps with decreasing the risk of cardiovascular disease. And also we'll be going to schools where we have SHIP, which is our school health initiative programs, where we will be teaching learners on how they can live a healthy life that will reduce their risk of cardiovascular disease later on in life. We also have our program, the Minute Heart and Stroke Support Group, where we offer support to those that are affected by heart disease as well as stroke, and teaching them on how they can support those that are affected as well as those that are not affected, on how they can prevent the risk of getting the heart disease.
Indeed. And is there anything you'd like to add prior to Valentine's Day?
As for the Valentine's Day, we are also raising funds for our organization, because we are an NGO, so we depend mostly on the donations. So we'd love for people to take part on this kind of campaign by going to our website at the www.heartfoundation.co.za. There is a donation tab. There people can click to donate to our organization so that we can continue with our vision for reducing cardiovascular disease. We also want to take this opportunity to wish everyone happy and healthy and a prosperous new year, and always to remember to take care of our heart as well as ourselves, so that we can enjoy 2025.
Shonisani, thanks so much indeed for your time. We appreciate it. That was Shonisani Nepalama, who's Heart Foundation Nutrition Lead. Thanks so much indeed. Now to this. Survivors of rape are often threatened by either perpetrators or their families to not report the case to the police. This according to a 35-year-old rape survivor in Dinokana near Zeerust in the Northwest Province. The woman, who was allegedly raped by 2 men on the 30th of December last year, demands justice. She says the alleged perpetrator's mother offered her 6,000 rand to not open a case against her son. Though she ended up registering the case with the local police, she is astonished that the wheels of the law are moving at a slow pace. SABC News reporter Thabo Bester and video journalist Jabu Afrika compiled this report.
This 35-year-old woman just returned from a funeral of a woman who was stabbed to death by an alleged rapist. Her story is not different from the deceased. 2 men allegedly raped her on the 30th of December. Like many people, she was getting ready to welcome the new year.
Ka di 30 ke tswile phakela ka bo 5 ke tsamaya le ngwanake second bonwaka ra go tlhagola le papa ka go le bitleng so ha re bua ke stile ka nna fase ra ja breakfast be ke tswa ke ya thabeng ke tlhotse ko ke tshitse le ditšhontšaka so gwana mantsi bua ke ntse ke le ko e bantha ba re go fora le nteng fa go a bora a re go tshire go thabeng e nngwe ko dimo ko kwa America.
She was from this establishment when things went downhill for her and turned for the worst. The 2 men took her to a house where she says they raped her.
Go tlhagile o mongwe fela re se itse go tlhaga kae a pere top white ke bara ke reng khapeng tsela ke ba re tla bona tsela ko pele a isontshe re tsamaye ba re isa ka tseleng go sekhutlho ko tamong ye go tenno ga iteng ko ba re isa ko 2 e goga diamond o neng a re wan khapawe ka bona gore ane ka o simolola go nna aggressive ebe ke thomola ebe ke wela fatsa ba ntshela a re kirile ka re repa wa go fitlha go galo itla a mama gagwe le batho ba bona go agiwa batho ba tletse mo jarete ra ba tlhalosetsa gore go etsegetse a tsara ngwana morena mama ga ene mosimane ngwana morena ke kopa o direla nna se go motshwarisa ona le bana le wena o ka se rate ngwana ga ya police station a tshwara.
The 2 men took her to a house where she says they raped her.
Wankanemisa mo beteng o lwala le nna borogwe ke pitlaganya maoto ge ka pitlaganya o se tsang ka potsa ke wa bula o robala le nna one rape ha fetsa wa tswa so tsamile 5 minutes go tsena o mo ke seka mo beteng ke alla mara sengensetsa sound kontle go tsena o mong ke a mmana o role di rifi ga ke kgone go mmana mo sefatlhegong ke bona ditlhago fe a ke because of light e tswang ko rumong ke kgone go bona ditlhago ke ga ntsenela o tla rota ke utlwa dispeme tsa kgweditswa.
She was able to identify one of the 2 men the following day. She says the alleged perpetrator's mother bribed her to not open a case.
Mama gagwe le batho ba bona go agiwa batho ba tletse mo jarete ra ba tlhalosetsa gore go etsegetse a tsara ngwana morena mama ga ene mosimane ngwana morena ke kopa o direla nna se go motshwarisa ona le bana le wena o ka se rate ngwana ga ya police station a tshwara ke go kopa ke feletsa ke itsere tšhelete nna ang offer yone 6,000 rand mara ke tsa ke sa batle ke re ka go irela ene
so aba tsena ba hetsa go bidiwa ba ba re
tebile ke a lwala ke se ke lwala ke ga o nna mantsi bo go nna bosigo ke a tlhakatlhakana fela le kolo ya ntsa nkisa sepetlele ke le se sepetlele malo ke gone ne ke tla mabane phakela ga ke simola fela ke ba tlhogo fela mo mosamong ke nagana ba shianyana ba gore ba tsama fela ba le free mara ba irile pause ene nna ntsenya bolwetse.
Police say the docket was taken to the National Prosecuting Authority. However, the NPA is reportedly unwilling to pursue the case.
A case of rape was registered on the 31st of December 2024. Then Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit members took the docket for investigation. Investigations that included obtaining of several statements from witnesses were done. The docket was then taken to prosecution on the 20th of January 2025 for decision. It was received back on Friday the 7th of February 2025 with the finding nolle prosequi.
SABC News sent an inquiry to NPA to ascertain its reasons for not prosecuting. However, the authority was unwilling to attend to the inquiry on a weekend. Deborah Pakedi, SABC News, Dinokana, outside Zeerust.
What a horrible story there. Thanks so much to Thabo Bester there in the Northwest. And that's how we wrap up today's edition of The Week Ahead. Thanks so much for joining us. SA Today is up next at the top of the hour. From myself, Maragita Mutlabe, as well as the rest of the Week Ahead team. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.